name's Crystal Brown. I'm the new assistant director in our office. We just recently expanded our staff, and within that role, I oversee the day-to-day operations, and I'm really still getting my feet wet since I've only been here 3 months, but I'll supervise the grads and undergraduate student workers and help coordinate the weekly programs while the director can focus more on strategic planning and that kind of stuff.
Awesome. What are some other specific things that is done in the office activity-wise?
We host, I want to say, 6 major days of service events throughout the year, like MLK Day of Service, 9/11, our annual Panther Service Day in April that kind of coincides with Global Youth Service Day. And then we also do several weekly programs throughout the semester academic year, a lot of after-school programs with youth, local agencies, and then of course there's always the random things that come up the agency needs for their annual fundraisers or programs that our students just think of that they say, hey, can we do this? And of course we're open to those unique and new opportunities as well.
Awesome. So now that you're working in student affairs here at Eastern, what was your kind of career path coming into student affairs?
That's an interesting one. I did my undergraduate work and major in information technology with a minor in business administration and a nonprofit certification. So I was really involved in homecoming and community service and AmeriCorps and undergrad. And then, like a lot of people, didn't know what I wanted to do, started talking to mentors on campus and decided to continue into student affairs. So I did both my undergrad and graduate work at Indiana State and did my assistantship in community engagement there and really enjoyed that opportunity. But then I transitioned and spent the last 4 years down at the University of West Georgia as their coordinator for student organizations and leadership programs. So more of the student activities side, and now I'm trying to go to that mid-level manager position to see where I want to go with my field. I knew I missed community engagement, wanted to go to that next step, so see where that takes me.
So why did you have this passion for student community service? Or why did you choose student community service?
I chose it, and I was strategically looking, job searching. I loved where I was at, but of course, as you think progression in the field, you need to think what other opportunities are there, or am I only going to be stagnant? So that was one thing. But as much as I loved what I did in student activities, and I'm already missing it a little bit, I really had missed the community engagement side of it. I loved volunteering in school and then helping put on more student-led programs and working with the nonprofits. And in the community I was in, we didn't have a volunteer service program, and I didn't have that much connection with nonprofits and larger student programming events. I was more administrative, so I wanted to get back into those sides of things.
So switching gears from your previous job back to community service, would you then again choose a different area of student affairs to work in? Is there other areas that you want to explore within student affairs?
I think professionally, not knowing where I'll end up, I don't know that I want to be a VP, just because I like that constant interaction with students, unless it was at the right institution where you still had that. But I could see, maybe a director or dean of students or something someday. So I think knowing that, I want to make sure I still, maybe not directly, but indirectly have opportunities to do some more with Greek life or judicial, or have, those partnerships and interactions with other departments, even housing in different places, because you never know what a dean of students or director role in student life will entail at an institution. Right. But I think, specifically speaking, I want, whichever role I end up in, I want to be working either in community engagement or student life, student activities. Ideally, I think it'd be cool to join those positions, and I know a lot of institutions are starting to do that, where leadership and service are one area, and I think that's a great combination to have.
Yeah, definitely. Going along with that, what are some personal development things that you do to stay up on current trends in student community service, or just in student affairs in general?
For me, I read Inside Higher Ed every day, just to kind of know what's going on out there. To be honest, I don't read the Chronicle or those kind of things as much, but I get the journals from being a member of NASPA and ACPA, so I may not read every article in them, but reading the topics each month, every time they come out, or quarterly, to see what those upcoming trends are, if there's anything that specifically relates to what I'm doing that I should be reading. And then I think it's also important to make sure you're going to the conferences, whether it's local, regional, or national, and getting that variety to go to those workshops, to network with the different professionals all over the country to see what they're doing, and having those communications between, because as much as it's a large field, it really is a small field. It's amazing how many times you go to see somebody at a conference and they're like, oh yeah, I know who your professor was, or I know who your supervisor is. So making sure you maintain those relationships is important too.
Is there anything specifically for student community service that provides professional development?
There are a couple. I actually just got back from the National Community Service Volunteering Conference that the Points of Light put on each year. That's some higher ed in that. It's a lot more geared toward nonprofit and corporations and building those partnerships. But it is still a good opportunity to network and hear what's going on the other side that you work with. I still do think the general student affairs associations are important. They may not always specifically have stuff for community service, but they relate with what you're doing with student activities in other areas. And then, of course, locally or regionally, you've got your statewide conferences, which have a variety of projects. I think getting involved in your local community, like just being on board of directors and keeping those relationships, city council, different things like that. And then, depending on your state or your campus needs, being a part of Campus Compact is a way to stay connected with higher ed through community service.
Cool. That's very good. So what would you say are some of the benefits of being a professional in the student affairs field?
I love it. I don't know that there is a con to it. I think it's about your passion for what you do, because obviously it's not about the money we make. If you love working with students, helping them grow and develop, I think that's really what it's all about. And then it's just finding your niche within that field on what you're passionate about or what your interests are, whether it's housing, judicial, financial aid, whatever, because you're still helping students in your own way in those areas.
So what would you say some of the maybe challenges as a professional would be?
I think, and you're going to hear this at any institution, any job interview, I think the challenges, and it's just learning to adapt to them at each institution, is the red tape or the way the business procedures work, because business, depending on the institution, may not understand student affairs or why we need to order crowns and art kits when they think that that's frivolous spending, especially in the economic times we are in.
Right.
So, justifying all those expenses or why you need to travel and everything. On the flip side, I think remembering as we get older, even though it seems like yesterday we were in college, we're every year working with 18 to 20-year-olds, generally speaking. I know we have non-traditionals too, but that age gap gets farther, so we're like, seriously, you can't write a complete sentence or follow directions in your introduction class that you might teach, but you got to remember where they're at and their stage they're in, and you still have those amazing moments where they do great and you're like, this is why I do what I do, and helping or seeing that student from that freshman class to their senior year and how involved they are and where they're going. But you just got to take that step back and breathe and make sure you get your way, have that work-life balance so that that doesn't burn you out in those moments.
You talked a little bit about students' development. So can you provide any theories that you would use in the office? Not to put you on the spot or anything.
Yeah, theory, that wasn't my greatest topic. I think the one I've used the most in the last couple of years was Aston's theory of involvement. That's the easy one, but it really, and it's also easy to explain to students when you're talking to freshman classes and telling them why they should get involved, and they're like, no, it doesn't mean crap to me. It really, you can really explain the reasons behind the retention and their better success rates and the skills they gain. So I think there's others out there that we use, whether it's Chickering or Pascal and Terezin or any of the others, but I think that one's an easy one for us to remember when we're professionally and we're not keeping up with it as well, but also to relate to the students about.
Cool. So what makes student community service unique among other student affairs departments?
I think it's unique because it's not always thought about in student affairs. Specifically, I know some institutions have a focus on it, but it's also not always housed in student affairs. There's a lot of institutions where it's in academic affairs because of the service learning side of it. So trying to bridge that partnership with student affairs, because it still really is an outside of the classroom experience. Or you have those institutions where it's a combination, being in both divisions, so figuring out how to work that and make sure that both sides, academic and student affairs, regardless of where it's housed, understands the importance of it and what you're doing for the students, the campus, and your local community.
So what advice would you give graduate students looking to go into student community service and student affairs?
I don't know that my advice specifically relates to the area, community service. I think just in general.
Sure.
I think, especially in your first job, obviously you want the right fit and you want wherever your passion is, but you have time to develop yourself and continue to figure out where you want to be in the field. So I think being open, not only in the job, but in the area of the United States, and talking about how your skills, whether you have housing experience, if you might find a job in student activities, how those skills can be transferable is really going to help you in that long. And then I think also not worrying about, I remember in grad school when we were getting ready to graduate, they were like, we were under the impression, because we started applying for jobs in February and going to conferences and all that, thinking, oh, we should have a job by graduation. Realistically, very few of you are going to have jobs by graduation. Don't stress about it. A lot of the jobs come in June and July and you're interviewing, so don't think, oh, it's July 1, I don't have a job. There's still a lot out there. Or get a good job, and then in a couple years, 2 or 3 years, look for that better fit, because you'll have that experience, a new institution, and you'll know this is really what I want and what I don't want. And then you can be more strategic in your locations or the type of institution, and making sure in those interviews you're asking the right questions. What's your office environment? Do you have a good work-life balance? Because we love what we do. 40 hours is not what we really work, but you have to make sure you have that work-life balance, or you're going to get burnout and you're not going to be successful for you personally or for your students.
So what would you say the best advice you've ever been given from a professional would be?
I know I just said this, but I actually think one of the biggest pieces of advice was the work-life balance, and that was very hard for me to learn when I went to my first job. I was fortunate enough to have a good boss who, I remember when we first started, we'd want to work till 6:30, and he'd be like, there would be some nights when he knew we were going to stay late, but it'd be there tomorrow. It wasn't the end of the world. So he'd come by our office at night when he'd go home. He'd be like, let's go. You're going home. You're leaving with me. I'm not letting you stay. And making sure that we took that time for ourselves, so that we didn't get burnout. And I think that was very beneficial. And I still struggled with it. We all do. No matter whether we're new professionals or VPs, we struggle with that. I think probably having a kid helped me a little bit more, because now I understand it better, and now I'm telling my boss to go home and not work on Sunday. So it depends on where you are personally in your life too, but I think that is a big thing to try and work on.
Is there anything else that you'd want to share about the student affairs field or student community service that maybe you've learned along the way through your path in student affairs?
I think another thing to share, which would kind of go along with the advice, get involved in the field. Some people are more timid, or may not know how to get involved, or be worried that it's going to take too much time to be on the conference planning committee. But there's other ways behind the scenes to still get involved. I do a lot of program reviews of proposals for conferences, so that you have that connection and involvement. But I think that's important, especially as you want to move up or make those networks and connections. So get involved somehow in the associations, attend the conferences, and also submit proposals to present. Even if you don't like it, you've got experiences out there. Even if it's a simple conference session on advice to grad students, or that transition looks like for them because you don't feel confident, or have somebody else to present with in the other areas of your specific field. But I think doing something occasionally is good to do.